Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be looking at episodes 20 through 24 of Apothecary Diaries. With this being the last batch of episodes for the first season, while I will still go through some of the bigger reveals and funny moments from these episodes, I wanted to primarily just talk about this first season as a whole. And I'm going to start by just continuing to gush about how fantastic of a character Mao Mao has been throughout the entirety of this show. I think she is such a fantastic example of a quiet character done well and done differently, because so often when we see the quiet character, it's somebody who is extremely brooding, which I would not necessarily categorize Mao Mao as, or it's somebody who is quiet and mysterious and they have this dark past, and that still falls kind of into the brooding category as well. But she isn't somebody who is this mysterious warrior or anything like that. She is somebody who, she's very passionate about very specific things. She's somebody who has an interest in something and she's willing to work very hard toward not only bettering herself and her skills in regards to those things, but if those things are not currently attainable, she's willing to work hard wherever she has to so that she can come back to this thing that she's really passionate about, which I absolutely love. I love how discerning she is. I love how observant she is, how hardworking she is. I just think she is an absolutely phenomenal character. And I feel that the way that this season ended did such a good job of showing, not necessarily even I feel like character growth is the right way to categorize this, but just showing the way in which her character changes throughout this first episode. And primarily I would say that's rooted in the way that she is finally confronting what she does know about her parents. So throughout the show, you're initially seeing that her adoptive father, she cares very much about him, she worries about him. He is a lot older, and that is in part why she's so worried about him. But you're starting to get bits and pieces revealed to you about his backstory, and that obviously informs you to some degree about Mao Mao and why she is the way that she is in regards to certain things. And you are piecing together, okay, well, her father, it turns out, is her adoptive father, is this other guy, and that was a big thing I focused on last week, is this other person actually her real father? And then you determine that he is, and you see glimpses to some degree of her mother, and it would seem that as a result of some of the things that her mother went through, also in addition to that, some of the physical things that she has endured, she is not necessarily in a place where she can care for Mao Mao. And in fact, you see the reverse happen, where a lot of Mao Mao's life, she has sort of shut herself off from the way that her mother has viewed her and treated her. And Mao Mao just does what she has to care for this only bit of family she has, and also push away this person that she knows is related to her, but that she doesn't really want anything to do with. And you're seeing within this batch of episodes her finally sort of gather the courage to confront this. And you specifically, I think, really see this highlighted in the Blue Roses episode. And you discover a little bit more about her father just sort of playing the game to play it. I kept wondering about his backstory, his motivations. I really was curious if he was one of those characters that's thinking, I just want to watch the world burn sort of situation, which is not necessarily quite, I think, where he's at, as he is not somebody who loves chaos and violence necessarily, but I think he just notices things, but I feel, can't help but try to keep his mind engaged, which is interesting, as that is something that is similar between him and Mao Mao. However, he doesn't really fully reach his potential, as in the past, when he did allow himself to have something, and this being his indulging this care that he had for this woman, when he did that, it resulted in one of potentially the things that he's regretted the most in his life. But he didn't realize for so many years that this person was still alive. And when you see his backstory, it really kind of sheds light on why he has sort of decided, I'm still going to activate this part of my mind. I am still a curious person, but I'm never going to really go extremely out of my way, as when I have in the past, it only resulted in something negative. And now we're seeing the way in which all of that ties back into how Mao Mao operates and the differences between them, and also the way in which her, in some fashion, allowing herself to accept that this is her father. She also, in doing this, allows him to have that bridge again between him and her mother, and in some fashion sort of like restores something in him, which took a lot for her because there is this sort of built up resentment and a lack of acceptance. But it's also, in a way, I think a lot of it is rooted in just how their society operates. Part of why I felt that her father was so slimy at first is just because of the way he talks about what he, quote unquote, did to her mother. It makes it sound as though it was not what you end up seeing in the flashback. And I, now looking back, feel he worded it that way, I guess you could almost say out of guilt. Like, he actually thought he was responsible for her mother's life completely deteriorating and her health deteriorating, and he blamed himself. So rather than say something like, I fell for this woman, and in having this relationship with her, I actually ultimately ruined her life, he doesn't frame it that way because that'd almost be too forgiving for himself, because he thought that things turned out a lot different than they did, although they still turned out to be very difficult. I think he still, because his impression was different than what reality actually was, he really was thinking of himself as a villain in a sense. And I think that led you to see him that way too. It was kind of interesting how the way in which he presents himself based off the image he has of himself then informs you of how you're supposed to feel about him. And then when you actually see his true past, it does kind of change things. And it was very interesting. I can't remember the last time I had such a turnaround within such a short amount of time for a character of my first impressions of them being so, I guess you could say so wrong, but also I'm like, but I almost think that's sort of what he thought of himself. I did mention before that I felt part of what we see with him is through how Jinchi sees him as well. And also, I think because you love Mao Mao and her adoptive dad seems so nice, that you view this man as like, ugh, so he like, quote unquote, ruined her mom and then had nothing to do, and then now he wants something to do with her, and now he wants to enter the picture after he's caused all this. You know, you just build up this idea when in actuality that's not quite what it was. And Mao Mao, I think, finally allowing herself, because so much, very subtly throughout the season, you've been seeing these glimpses of how she will shut off certain times, and she will look away, or she will kind of put up this wall internally toward opening herself up to caring for people, because the very people that should have loved her and they should have been there for her, circumstances did not allow for that. So she's always kind of had this exterior. And I think over time, she's not only allowing herself to have some kind of connection and relationship with other people, but she's accepting that she doesn't necessarily, she can't reverse things. She can't suddenly make her parents perfect and this perfect, cute, happy family. She can't restore what she never had, but she can accept that she can somewhat have a relationship with her father, and that won't completely break her in a sense. I really think that you've seen her slowly opening up. I mentioned when it happened that I felt like her talking to the youngest son. There was those three brothers, and their father had passed away, and then there's the whole, like, they put the bowl up on the, where the window is, that whole scenario. And I mentioned that when she tells the younger brother, if you ever aren't feeling well, go see this person, he can help you. And how that was somewhat outside of her character. And I do feel like she's been slowly having a little bit more friendships blossom with certain characters, or some kind of connection with certain characters. And I think that all of those things, and also I would argue to some degree feeling like secure enough and safe enough to actually do things, literally because her setting is so cutthroat. It's so either you're fired, or now you have a job, or now you're an outcast, and like it's so quick that you can lose everything. And that has happened to her adopted father, who it turned out was, by the way, I just want to say I caught that it was her real father's uncle. But anyway, as a result of feeling a lot safer and secure, I think that combined with these little ways in which she's saying, oh, I can have relationships with other people. And yes, sometimes it can be hard. I'm seeing with others the way in which people can be betrayed, the way they can lose loved ones. Ultimately, there's something to be said of a sense of community. So I think in building those smaller relationships and in building more confidence with herself, that is part of what allowed her to then be able to confront everything with her father and her past. I thought it was so well done. When I came into this show, to be honest, I was looking for something that was fun and a little more lighthearted and that would maybe be funny also. It certainly had a lot of what I was hoping it would have, and then in addition, it had a lot of depth that I wasn't expecting. Not that I thought it was going to be very superficial and it would be a surface level kind of show. I just don't know that I was anticipating that there would be so much development, both subtly and then things that are a little bit more upfront. I don't know if I was quite anticipating that, especially not within this first season, because a lot of times, sometimes you need a lot of time before you really feel invested with certain characters, but I was not expecting to fall in love with this character so quickly, and I did, and I think that her development throughout the show, it was absolutely fantastic. So I can't wait for an additional season. I'm going to be so ecstatic when that second season comes out. Getting to some of the things that popped up within this batch of episodes, though, because like I said, I did want to touch on a few things. First off, I have been wondering how old Gaoshin is for pretty much the entirety of this season, because I was like, I think he's older than he looks, and then there's a few times that it confirmed. But first off, you find out that the one person who's kind of generally around and has been helping Mao Mao in certain investigations, I'll say, when you realize that's his son, which you're like, oh, and then you do discover that Jinshi is indeed not a eunuch, which I was pretty sure was the case, but you find out he's been taking something to sort of halt certain developmental things occur, and Gaoshin is kind of being very parental in a sense, where he's thinking like, I just want you to settle down and be happy. And he's having this conversation with him in one of these episodes. And he's also telling him like, at some point, if you take too much of that stuff, you're not going to be able to have this. But he says it in a way that's a little bit more blunt. And Jinshi's like, ha. But anyway, so you do find that out about Jinshi. However, there is a line because I'm talking about Gaoshin in particular, there's a line where he says, no father wants to be disliked. And that does make me curious if it's just a parental feeling he has, like he loves this, because he has several children. I think he even says one of them had their own child, so now he's a grandpa, and I'm like, no. But anyway, so I do wonder if there is something that is difficult between him and one of his children, and if it is the person that you do see around more often than not. So I don't know, but I'm guessing we're gonna get more with his character and potentially his family in the future. I hope so, because I really do like this character quite a bit. And also, I was so amused at one point, because there's of course, funny moments that happen, but there's the whole part where Mao Mao is helping Liaku because he wants to save up so that he can buy out the contract of the one big sister of Mao Mao's, and she's like, well, let me see if you're her type, and there's that whole ridiculous scene, and then of course Jinshi comes in, but I noted that I thought it was so funny that Mao Mao was like, greetings, and it's the happiest she's ever sounded to a greeting with Jinshi, so that was quite amusing. But then he just seems so upset, and she's like, wow, pretty people are scary when they're angry. But she also wonders to herself, she thinks, is he jealous? And I'm like, oh, Mao Mao. Sweet Mao Mao. Yeah, obviously. He's super obsessed with you. How do you not see this yet? And then, of course, at the very end of the show, when she's dancing and he's carrying her, and there's this moment where it's like all twinkly-eyed, and you know that something stupid is going to come out of her mouth that's going to make the moment not be romantic, but it's also playing up the romantic aspects of the pretty moonlit area, and she's in this pretty outfit or whatever, and then she's like, how come I never got that one cow part or whatever it was? I forget. I'm so sorry. I don't remember what it was. And he's like, ugh. And then I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but he basically headbutts her, and she's like, hey. So anyway, of course that would be how this season would end. I did really like that her friend from the beginning, that's so sweet and cute, Shaolin, that during the moments when Mao Mao is trying to have the roses bloom and then she ends up dyeing them, which was pretty fascinating, I gotta say. But her friend is so cute. First off, she had a quote that I really liked because she was excited to be helping Mao Mao, and Mao Mao's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, I get to skip work and eat snacks. And I was just like, ah, she's precious. And also, yeah, who wouldn't want to do that? And then when I did note that this whole episode just shows how willing Mao Mao is to take on a challenge and how hardworking and brilliant she is. But she really perseveres, and then her friend is there because Mao Mao is losing so much sleep, which she does tend to do anytime she has this enormous undertaking. But you see that Xiaolin offers to do more and help her so that she can sleep, and I love their friendship. It's so pure and innocent and lovely, and this character is absolutely darling. And I hope we get to see more of her in season 2. I did like the development of Mao Mao with the other concubines as well. I thought that we still primarily stick to the first 2 that we were introduced to at the beginning, but I am going to be very curious to see what happens with the new pure consort, I think is how they refer to her. I might be mixing up the names, but there's the really, really young one that's been around that really saw Jinxi's mother kind of as a mother figure as well. There's her, and then there's the one that's entered the picture where it seems like she's going to maybe stir things up a little bit. Oh, and then the last thing is the one character, Sure. She did indeed seem to be somewhat related, like she seemed to have some kind of connection to everything that happened with Jinxi. Why? I don't really know. I don't know her motives, but she pulled a Romeo and Juliet where she pretended to be dead, and then it turned out that she wasn't. So I will be curious to see if she makes an appearance again, what her motivations are. We still don't really entirely know why people were after him, and there are still a lot of questions left up in the air. And speaking of questions left up in the air, there is a little part of me that's like, why did Mao Mao not care more about why Jinxi was in that ceremony? Shouldn't she care a little bit more about, like, oh, maybe he's more important than I thought? I feel like she should care a little more, but she's kind of like, whatever, it's not really my business, and then just moves on from that, and I was like, dang it. So it seems like she doesn't entirely know who he is still, and I'm wondering if that's going to be some big reveal later, or if when it is revealed, if she's like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense, and she's just going to take it in stride, which that wouldn't surprise me at all. But yeah, that's like the only big thing that I feel she could have figured out and then just sort of redirected her attention to other things. But anyway, I have loved this first season. I can't wait until we get that second season. It's going to be so fun to watch it. Ah, man, the wait though. I really don't want to have to wait, but I do look forward to it. I think this show is great. Obviously, I assume that if you're watching these that you yourself have watched the show, but if you're one of those rare individuals that doesn't care about spoilers and then you watch videos anyway to hear a little bit more about it, if you've not watched this, I would highly recommend it. It was such a good time, so much fun, funny. It had a lot more to it than I was expecting, so would highly recommend. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.